What can a new generation of architects do to address the problems of the past while enhancing Croydon's complex character? And as the new London Mayor settles into office,
I think from the 50s or 60s of Croydon as a whole, and it looks like an ice skating rink, and all the buildings look like these beautiful objects skating around on this big ground. And of course the whole of Croydon is almost built on one big artificial ground because it's got basements underneath servicing the whole thing. That has also had the consequence that some of these buildings actually now seem to be a little bit lost in that space. And it's not necessarily quite as beautiful as that wonderful model.
The businesses went in before everything else there. You know, the last thing to come was like Carluccio's. The first thing to come in was the towers that you're trying to develop and regenerate when you've already got a kind of commercial area and you're building on that as a platform, rather than another piece of city where you've got residents, you've got businesses, you've got different types of agencies all operating together in the same space.
There's been successive waves of politicians and planners in Croydon who have been grappling with this. How do we move on from what happened in the 60s and 70s, learn from mistakes but continue to do something big and bold?
Historically, there was focus on kind of the object of this new building and how great that was going to be, and not that much consideration to what was happening around it. Or if you're talking about roads, like just do the road and not worry about how that affects what surrounds it. And I think that the difference now is that there are still these quite grand projects, but it seems that the council are much more sensitive to and concerned with the setting that goes around all of those things. And in that way, it's a much more humane way of looking at development.
Whatever you do planning-wise or development-wise, you're thinking about the total place. It's not just about the built form, it's actually about how it looks and feels as well.
In a way, Croydon reminds me of somewhere like Manchester in the early 90s, which was a place where there really were very few people living in the city centre at all. And it underwent this enormous renaissance kind of over the next kind of 10, 15 years, where there's a very active programme of reintroducing the population to a place that had been formerly a place really exclusively of business. And I think that's what the potential is that Croydon has now, and the council are very actively trying to make public spaces and make public infrastructure that's going to allow for that change to take place.
So Croydon has a series of very ambitious master plans that cover a lot of the city centre.
How to make the station more present so that one could sort of enhance West Croydon as a front door. And then secondly, it was about strengthening a sense of place, and the arches really came out of a desire to create a dialogue between the two sides of the street. And some of the locally listed facades on the other side of Station Road have this sort of arched structure that strengthened a sense of street and connection and ability to move from one place to another.
When it comes to looking at the city at a closer scale, it definitely starts to become more at the scale of public realm design and how elements of a city are joined together.
What we're really interested in is the way in which architecture and design is relevant to a huge range of people. So it's not just architects or designers that are interested in that. That actually the everyday person is really affected by the things that architects do, and that the work that we do should be legible to them and they should be able to appreciate. It doesn't need to be some kind of high-minded concept, but if you write Southend in really big letters on a newly refurbished building, that people kind of stop and take stock of that. I think it's a visible statement of kind of feeling positive about an area, and that's what we're trying to, I guess, instill in people.
these are projects that reject the idea of the planner as God. Brash, towering monuments have been replaced with small, seemingly modest interventions. The architects have turned their attention away from the pure interests of the market and focus instead on the locals who predominantly use the area. East Croydon Bridge by Hawkins Brown have been thoughtfully designed to address an array of pragmatic problems that make it hard to navigate the city.
I think the key thing about the bridge is that the tracks provide this great big split down the middle of Croydon, and we were looking to the Whitgift shopping centre, the centre of Croydon, without having to make a half-mile detour around the station.
I think the East Croydon Station Bridge by Hawkins Brown and Egray West is a terrific project in its own right. But what's particularly successful about it is that it's part of a larger mini master plan for that area. A plan that includes Muffs Park, a lot of new housing, the Box Park restaurant district. And I think this method that the local authorities developed of asking often quite young architects to develop mini master plans for areas of strategic growth within Croydon.
Deal of planning that went into where they went or what they were or how they related to one another.
I think even at the time that led to lots of criticisms from the architectural press about the fact that there didn't seem to be a coherent aesthetic eye sort of overseeing this change, and that it was commercially driven.
And buildings on stilts, so there isn't really anything happening at your level other than sort of mess.
Marshall's uncontested power meant that his word went, that his priority was pure and simple, to make money from the building boom. But as the city centre was overtaken with monolithic office blocks, the pedestrian realm was increasingly unfriendly, uncomfortable and dangerous.
or what they were or how they related to one another.
I think even at the time that led to lots of criticisms from the architectural press about the fact that there didn't seem to be a coherent aesthetic eye sort of overseeing this change, and that it was commercially driven and brash. And that's because it was.
When Croydon was first developed, it was like definitely a satellite city. So it was designed so they could get in, park their cars, go to work and leave and go.
It was just focused on work, on working life, and that was, I think, a lack of attention on what really people need in a place. Okay, you need to work, but you need to have public space as well, which has been forgotten during the regeneration in the 60s.
If you walk around that at ground level, it doesn't make any sense. It's all ramps going down underneath buildings and surface car parks and buildings on stilts. Croydon really was built for affluent people. You know, James Marshall wanted to attract a lot of middle class people to the town, working in financial services and office jobs. It's all about consumerism, and if you don't have any money, but that is your town centre, and that's all it has, you feel really alienated by it.
What you've got is a baseline of like a halo of a commercial area.
So the work that we did in Southend was looking at the high street there and how the public realm could be improved. So some of the interventions were relatively modest. So there was a couple of new benches and a new tree, for example, on a little pocket of public space that turn it from being somewhere that's kind of windswept and a bit horrible into somewhere that's actually quite nice to have a seat. And then some larger changes, but it was little pockets of intervention and change rather than thinking something on one site was going to fix the whole area.
Big realm in a shopping district. Unlike Wellesley Road, the three vast shopping centres and commercial high street he created were pedestrian-friendly and easily navigated. But is commercial space an adequate substitute for civic space? In the warm, air-conditioned bubble of a mall, the citizen is reduced to a consumer, only able to participate in public life through spending money.